Hi guys, Olive here today to do a requested video, which is another drunk review. If you're not into my videos that involve alcohol, then I'll see you in the next video. But if you are, this is going to be a review of Cannibalism, A Perfectly Natural History by Bill Schutt. This book was definitely appropriate for me to read at the end of this month, considering that I seem incapable of reading nonfiction not written by men named Bill, and I was having a really stressful time at work, so what's better to take the edge off than a nice account of cannibalism? Cannibalism is known as the ultimate taboo. I got some funny looks while reading this one on the bus, but as you can imagine, this being a book about cannibalism, it does talk about cannibalism in every regard. It talks about cannibalism in nature amongst animals. It talks about cannibalism in human society and the different ways that cannibalism has presented itself in recorded human history. In nature, cannibalism usually manifests itself in one of a few ways. Cannibalism in the natural world can occur in times of extreme deprivation, where organisms that are to survive must use cannibalism as a means to an end in order to be able to continue surviving. It also serves as a solution to crowding. It can be a form of parental care, or could even just simply be a hunting strategy. Because of this cultural taboo that we have in place, the portions of this book that discuss cannibalism in the animal world are much more easy to digest. However, when you get about halfway through the book and you start reading about cannibalism when it comes to humans, you will notice a physical reaction. And of course, that is because we humans, although we are a part of the natural world, consider ourselves at least one step removed. We have culture and society and taboos that encourage us against practices such as cannibalism. However, even though it is extremely hard to face, cannibalism is a part of human history. There is reason to believe that humans have practiced cannibalism in times of extreme deprivation, such as in horrific wartime situations, which I will touch on a little bit later. But cannibalism has also been practiced for ritualistic purposes, for medicinal purposes, or just simply because it's a part of a culture. This book suggests that the cultural taboo against cannibalism goes as far back as ancient Greece, which is not surprising. Cannibalism-related stories, whether they be true crime-ish or not, are slapped on headlines because they sell papers. It is such a culturally ingrained taboo by now that I feel like people definitely would have a problem looking backward and trying to figure out why cannibalism may or may not have been necessary in periods way in our past. There is a very long chapter in this book dedicated to the Donner Party, which is one of the most well-known cases of cannibalism in American history. But it also has a section on the Siege of Leningrad, which, if that doesn't count as a situation of extreme deprivation, I don't know what would. It is very easy for us to crack jokes about the Donner Party or the Siege of Leningrad, these situations of extreme deprivation and hunger and desperate attempts for survival. We could never know what that was like to live in unless we were there ourselves. If you've been around my channel for a while, since like early 2016, then you may remember that I had a big problem with the criticisms of this book, Hunger by Elise Blackwell, which does take place during the Siege of Leningrad. The main character of this book does participate in some unsavory behaviors. However, there is one reviewer that the author herself addresses in the back of this paperback release. That reviewer called the main character of this book one of the least likable, least identifiable characters in all of literature. I had a visceral reaction to reading that, in that I wanted to scream at this reviewer, how would you know what it was like to live that person's life at that time? And the answer is, you don't. You don't know what it would be like. As is outlined in this book, when you are experiencing a severe case of hunger, your body biologically changes. You basically go into extreme survival mode. You become irritable and you will take whatever source of nutrition you can find. I am extremely lucky to have never been put in that position. But until I am never going to judge a person or a character who was put into that situation. The chapter on the Donner Party was not only illuminating, given that I knew what the Donner Party was but didn't know any of the details, but it was also heartbreaking. And if I didn't know as much as I did know about the siege of Leningrad, I would have felt exactly the same about that passage as well. This book also does discuss, when it comes to the founding of the New World, the use of cannibalism as a justification for colonialization. I think we all know by now that Christopher Columbus was not the greatest of guys. The explorers tended to call the natives of the New World cannibals when it so fit their agenda. When they felt that a particular area needed more governance, then the natives were cannibals who needed to be governed over. Whereas when the explorers wanted to pull back a little bit, then they're no longer cannibals. They've seen the light. Only to then be called cannibals again when the explorers wanted to exert their influence once more. So in that case, we're seeing a cultural taboo of the Western world be weaponized against a society that does not have the same cultural framework. We all know that culture is extremely important in determining who we are, the thoughts we have, the beliefs we have. There was one particular quote at the beginning of a chapter that really resonated with me that I'd like to share with you at this juncture. I think there is nothing barbarous and savage in that nation, from what I have been told, except that each man calls barbarism whatever is not his own practices. For indeed it seems that we have no other test of truth and reason than the example and pattern of opinions and customs of the country we live in. Being a product of Western society, I do feel the taboo of cannibalism and feel extremely uncomfortable even reading about it. But I do feel, especially after reading the quote that I shared with you earlier, that there need to be allowances for cultural differences. Cultures that developed extremely separated from Western culture do not always share the same taboo against cannibalism. And while this is not me advocating to go out and eat your best friend tomorrow, I do think it's important to realize that when you're talking about cultural differences, you're talking about an extreme difference in worldview. To start to summarize all of this up, do I think this is a book you should read? Absolutely. Does it err a bit on the side of the macabre? Of course it does. It's about cannibalism. But even if you're not into a darker sort of nonfiction, there is so much in this book to engage you. It is entertaining and informative, and of course, sometimes cringeworthy, but that is somewhat alleviated by the author's insertion of some quips and snarky comments that counterbalance the darker subject matter. I should say that this book does not go into detail about famous cases of cannibalism, famous cannibals that have been arrested for their deeds. This book is not sensationalistic in any way, and I really admired it for that. I do have to thank Jenny, formerly of Adultish Books, I miss you, for not only suggesting that we buddy read this book, or as it ended up turning out, more like parallel reading, but she also requested that I do this drunk review, so I hope it's living up to your expectations. So do I recommend this book for you to read? Absolutely. I thought it was fantastic. When it comes to the format in which you choose to read it, I know Jenny listened to the audiobook and she said that was phenomenal, but I personally read the physical book from the library, and where I am sure I missed out on some things from the audiobook, since I am a big audiobook lover, there are some things in the physical book that you would miss out on if you did choose the audiobook route. For example, there are illustrations in the physical book that you would miss out on if you chose the audio copy. This is an example of one. Look how adorable. It's a skull chia pet. I personally think you're missing out if you don't get to see those. Not all of the illustrations in the book are intended to bring out the darker aspects of the book. Some of them really are intended to help you get a greater understanding of the scientific elements within the book. So for those reasons, I can personally recommend the physical copy of the book, but I'm sure Jenny would argue for the audiobook all day long. So those are some tipsy feelings on this book on cannibalism. I hope you enjoyed them. I would love to hear what you think about this book, or whether or not you're interested in reading it, down in the comment section below. Or you can talk to me on one of my various social media accounts, the links to which are all in the description box below. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you're having a great day, and I will see you in the next video. Bye.